Thank you for the opportunity. Hello, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this presentation. The title that I'm going to present is a new kind of city science built on living structure. Living structure is a physical phenomenon and a mathematical structure. It exists pervasively in our physical space, in buildings, in gardens, in streets, in cities, and in every part of the physical world. Living structure can be well reflected in the human mind and the heart, triggering a sense of livingness or vibrance. In other words, living structure has nurturing or healing effect. A recent study found that newborn babies, genetically healthy babies who were born during the pandemic have the lower intelligence than those who were born before the pandemic. One possible reason is that the minimalist design or non-living structure that reduces babies' intelligence. In this connection, the city science that I have been advocating appears to be at the right time. What is the city science? It is the science, technology, and art of dealing with the acquisition, storage, processing, production, presentation, and dissemination of city information in order to help address the three fundamental issues about a city: how it looks, how it works, and what it ought to be. It aims not only for better understanding city structure and dynamics, or cities are, in other words, but also for better transforming modern cities and communities to become living or more living towards a sustainable society. I will begin with three fundamental issues about cities: how they look, how they work, and what they ought to be. I will use two simple examples to illustrate living structure, which is defined under the third view of space. Space is neither lifeless nor neutral, but a living structure capable of being more living or less living. I will present the two fundamental laws of living structure and two design principles for making living or more living structures. Next, I will look at in detail the science of living structure, which is built on new theory of centers, supported by the 15 properties. These 15 properties can be well reflected in the human mind and the heart, triggering a sense of liveliness or a sense of beauty. This sense of beauty can be captured by the so-called mirror of the self experiment, using human beings as a measuring instrument. The science of living structure is a new kind of science for which I will present a research agenda in the end. There are three fundamental issues about cities: how they look, how they work, and what they ought to be. These are also three fundamental issues of geography as a science of the Earth's surface. Conventionally, geography concentrates largely on description of structure, literally meaning the description of the Earth's surface. I argued, and will argue again, that without understanding how it works or the underlying mechanism of dynamics, we cannot well describe the Earth's surface. Cities or geographical space in general are complex and non-linear systems, so they cannot be well described by Euclidean and Cartesian geometries or by the conventional statistics based on normal distribution or Gaussian statistics, so to speak. More importantly, structure or morphology is the outcome of dynamics. So the second issue is larger than the first one, or second issue contains the first one. The third issue is about how to make cities to be living or more living, and it is even larger, being the largest issue among the three. The science of living structure goes beyond physics towards a design science. The notion of design or design science, therefore, has the largest scope, larger than physics, or larger than understanding how things are. The notion of design implies that goodness of design can be measured or quantified. It is a matter of the fact, rather than opinion or personal preferences as conventionally conceived. To further clarify this point, let's use a parable. Before the invention of thermometer, warmness was a kind of human feeling. Yet after the invention of thermometer, warmness became the physical concept of temperature. Nowadays, how good a city is still considered to be opinion or human feeling, but in the near future, it may become a measurable or quantifiable fact. Living structure is to livingness what temperature is to warmness. What is living structure? It is such a structure in which there are far more small substructures than larger ones. Taking the dataset of the 10 numbers, 1, a half, 1/3, and 1/10, for example, it is a living structure, for it consists of far more smalls than larges. As shown in this diagram, the average of the 10 numbers point to 9 partitions the 10 numbers into 2 parts, the head for those larger than the average, and the tail for those smaller than the average. Interestingly, this partition into the head and the tail can continue for the head again, with the second average 0.61. The 3 numbers in the head are partitioned again into the head and the tail. Thus, the notion of far more smalls than larges recurs twice, meeting the minimal condition of being a living structure. Head-tail bricks is a new classification scheme we invented for data with a heavy tail distribution. It is a recursive function as illustrated by the dataset of the 10 numbers. Head-tail bricks has been widely used to various applications, and the method itself has also been extended from head-tail bricks 1.0 to head-tail bricks 2.0. Let's now use this painting, namely composition by the Dutch painter Pieter Mondriaan, one of the most famous 20th century artists, who is well known for using simple geometric shapes and the primary colors of red, yellow, and blue. Conventionally, we see this painting consisting of the 7 pieces, among which the most salient pieces are in red, yellow, and blue. Instead of the static view or Lego-like assembly view, we can see this painting consisting of 18 recursively defined substructures, as shown in panels B, C, D, and E. In total, 18 substructures. In other words, the painting is evolved from the empty square in a step-by-step fashion. First, from panel B to C, they are far more newborn or newly generated substructures than older ones. From C to D, there are also far more newborns than older ones. Thus, the notion of far more newborns than older ones recurs twice, so it is a living structure. In addition, we can notice that there are at each iteration, except the first, far more smalls than larges. Having seen these 2 examples, it is not difficult to figure out what a living structure is. It is such a structure in which there are far more small substructures than larger ones. The notion of living structure was first developed by Christopher Alexander. It is defined under the organic or organismic worldview, which was first conceived by the British philosopher Alfred Whitehead. The organismic worldview extends the mechanistic worldview to include human beings as part of the world picture. In other words, we human beings are part of the world rather than separated from the world. Under the organismic worldview, Alexander formulated the third view of space. Space is neither lifeless nor neutral, but a living structure capable of being more living or less living. Under the third view of space, the entire Earth's surface is a living structure, ranging from the largest scale of the Earth's surface to the smallest, a tiny ornament of centimeters, for example. Living structure is said to be governed by two fundamental laws, scaling law and turbulence law. There is a recurring notion of far more small than larger for the larger substructures, yet more is similar for the small substructures. These two notions, far more small than larger and more is similar, underline the two fundamental laws of living structure. To generate living structure, there are two design principles, namely differentiation and adaptation. The differentiation principle means that larger substructures are differentiated or partitioned or decomposed like a cell division to generate small substructures in a step-by-step fashion, while the adaptation principle ensures that the generated substructures are well adapted to each other, that is, to meet the two fundamental laws. Living structure represents a big paradigm shift from Rene Descartes' mechanistic worldview to Alfred Whitehead's organismic worldview. Over the past 300 years of science, there are two fundamental views of space: Newtonian absolute space and the Leibniz relational space, which are both framed under the Cartesian mechanistic worldview. Current GIS is built on these two conventional views of space. For example, the two commonly used GIS representations, vector and raster formats, are based on geometric primitives of points, lines, polygons, and pixels. All these geometric primitives make good sense for computer storage and processing. However, they make little sense to the human mind. This is because we human beings focus on meaningful geometric shapes, such as streets and cities, rather than points, line, polygon, or pixels. The father of the fractal geometry, Benoit Mandelbrot, used to see that Euclidean geometric shapes are cold and dry, a term with a clear sense of the feeling on it. In contrast to the feeling of cold and dry, the term living structure conveys some positive feelings on it. Over the years, I have developed some novel concepts, such as nature cities and nature streets, to better understand cities as a living structure. The science of living structure is a new kind of science under the organismic worldview rather than under the currently conceived mechanistic worldview. It is built on the theory of centers, supported by the 15 properties. Living structure is such a physical structure that can be defined mathematically. In other words, the degree of liveliness or degree of beauty can be computed objectively. Importantly, the degree of beauty can be well reflected in the human mind and the heart, for which a new observation method was developed, the so-called mirror of the self experiment. That is, using human beings to measure the degree of liveliness according to their own feeling, somehow like asking people to tell the degree of temperature instead of using thermometer. Emerging geospatial big data such as nighttime imagery, open street map data, and location-based social media data provides powerful means to do the science of living structure. With emerging big data, cities or city boundaries can be delineated at the global scale across countries. The notion of nature cities is defined from the bottom up using open access big data. So it is a universal definition. It can be traced back along the time dimension to examine how cities are evolved. This slide shows the evolution of nature cities month by month using the location-based social media data of Bright Kite, with cities of Chicago and New York as two examples. By the way, X-Woman is a software we developed for topological analysis and scaling hierarchy of very large speed networks. It is widely used in space syntax community by students and urban design professionals for better understanding city structure and dynamics. Recently, we have built up an add-in for automatically deriving nature cities from very large location data. For example, over 129 million building footprints of USA and the nighttime imagery of the entire world. We have been thinking to transform X-Woman into products or services for smart city in the future. The 15 properties as the foundation of the theory of centers are pervasively occurring or recurring in nature, as well as in what we human beings build and make, including, for example, buildings, cities, and artifacts. We do not have time to get into the details of the 15 properties. However, there are a few points to make. First, these 15 properties capture very well how beautiful things look like in terms of their underlying geometry, so-called geometric properties. And in the meantime, they act as the transformation properties for design beautiful or living things. Second, the 15 properties were distilled by Christopher Alexander from his classical work of the 253 patterns, the pattern language work. And the third, the 15 properties have been further distilled into the two laws and the two design principles. In other words, the two laws, the two design principles originate from the 15 properties. We have seen previously that the painting A meets the minimal condition of being a living structure, for the notion of the far more newborns than older ones occurs twice. Here is another painting. Painting B is more structurally living, for the notion of far more newborns than older ones occurs 3 times. It is the difference of twice and 3 times makes painting B more living or more structurally beautiful. In other words, the degree of beauty or degree of liveliness can be calculated. The calculated degree of beauty or structure beauty, so to speak, can be well reflected in the human mind and the heart. It is essentially the underlying living structure that triggers a sense of the beauty or liveliness. The more substructures, the more beautiful. The high hierarchy of the substructures, the more beautiful. Alexander developed the mirror of self-experiment. 2 images or things put in parallel, side by side, and the human subject is asked to pick up one. He or she has a better sense of the feeling of belonging. Taking these 2 paintings, for example, if they are painted in the 2 t-shirts, which t-shirt you would love to have? It was found that most people would love to take the right one. Note that the mirror of self-experiment is not just a simple perception test, like or dislike, also called intersubjective agreement, but to examine the existence of living structure. In other words, it is the underlying living structure or the notion of far more small than largest that triggers the sense of beauty or sense of livingness. Recently, we have developed a computational approach to detecting living structure and subsequently design living structure of open environments. To the left of the screen, it is the city plan for the city of London. And the 6 colored panels show its 6 hierarchical levels. From them, we can see how it was transformed to become more and more living. To the right of the screen, it is part of Manhattan city plan, and the 3 colored panels show its 3 hierarchical levels. In comparison of these 2 city plans, there is little doubt that the city of London is more living or more structurally beautiful. To summarize, city science under the notion of living structure is a new kind of science or a new kind of design science. It is a science defined under the organismic worldview or under the third view of space. City science aims not only for understanding how cities are, but also for making or remaking cities to be living or more living, what the cities ought to be, so to speak. The city science is dominated by non-equilibrium thinking or scaling law instead of Tobin's law. The city science is no longer a minor science thinking applications of major sciences such as physics and biology, but a major science, a kind of complexity science, which may contribute to other sciences. The city science is a new kind of science for which I present briefly a research agenda here. Emerging geospatial big data, in particular location-based social media data, provide a powerful means for revealing living structure and its dynamics, and further for better understanding how human mobility or activity in general shapes and is shaped by the underlying living structure. Structure beauty of space or matter has emerged as a new concept for image understanding and computer vision. It can help measure or quantify the livingness of space. Living structure or structure beauty in particular can help assess the goodness of urban planning, that is using 2 design principles and the 15 properties to guide the urban design or planning. In other words, urban design or planning is no longer based on experts' opinion or personal preferences, but instead use beauty to assess goodness of urban planning. It can help transform modern cities to be living or more living. Along the mirror of self-experiment, neuroscientific evidence can be gathered using, for example, eye tracking fixation points and the other biometrics data. This data would prove how living structure is reflected in the human mind and the heart, and further verify how the kind of the reflection varies from people to people in terms of their cultures, gender, and races. Many thanks for your attention, and I have enjoyed the presentation. Any questions and comments are welcome.